Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Huge developments in the F1 driver market today, with Red Bull's Helmut Marko effectively confirming that Liam Lawson will be getting a drive at Red Bull's sister team RB over the coming months. Given the fact that Yuki Tsunoda has signed a new deal with the team, surely the only explanation can be that Daniel Ricciardo is going to be out of a drive. Has he jumped the gun on this one though, Marko? Does Christian Horner agree with his assessment? If it was to occur, would Ricciardo be once again forced to retire from the sport? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. First of all, I talked about this at the end of yesterday's video, but I know some of you guys will have missed it, so I thought I'd mention it again. This weekend we are in Austria. These are the new gravel traps, turn 9, turn 10, to ensure that drivers simply cannot breach track limits, because if they do, they're going to be in the gravel, losing time, if not straight up spinning out of the race, or of course qualifying where it's largely an issue. But of course the race was also a major problem last year with so many track limits violations over the course of the weekend. This is absolutely a good change. They've also, however, made some other changes to the curbing to add what is, well, as you can see here, new cameras. Now, these are cameras that will be monitored at some corners where the track limits are usually violated by AI to determine whether the drivers have gone outside of the lines. Now, as you guys can see here, they've got the white line, which denotes the edge of the track. Then they've got this new blue line that was also being used actually in Barcelona. Now, it seems that the blue line helps the AI determine a little bit better whether the tyre is actually over the white line or not. So that's why we've got this, and if a driver is outside of track limit, or at least it's close, the AI will notice that, and then it will basically tell some people that are monitoring it, like, hey, have a look at this one, I think that he might be over the line, whether he is or not, who knows. But like, last year was a disaster in Austria, as we know. So they're trying a few things. There's now gravel here, so if you go over the line, you're going to be in the gravel. The existing gravel is now closer at turn 4, where there can also be problems on the outside of turn 4. AI technology flagging infringements instantly. That's what they say. This is some of the explanation on the semi-automated technology with the blue line that we just mentioned. So turn 5, turn 9, turn 11 in Barcelona it was used, and of course it's going to be happening this weekend as well. So basically the AI will tell the personnel, hey, that looked out, that looked in, whatever, and then the ones that look out, they will then, review, and hopefully it makes the whole process a little bit faster. Last year, you guys remember, there was all those post-race penalties because they had to review everything and they just could not cope with the amount of track limits infringements during the course of the Grand Prix. So the gravel is a good change. And absolutely, this should be a good change as well, if it works. And it's not like the AI just does it. 5 people will monitor the technology and multiple cameras to analyze the cast placements and make quick judgments on the clearer incidents. So this is, hopefully, good use of technology. We'll see if it actually works or not. A couple of interesting things on Mercedes. This was just a funny thing, really, but there was this conservative politician today called Russell George, investigated over basically like betting on the election date. If you guys have been following UK politics, you know that it's been a big talking point of the last week or so. But yeah, Russell George reminds me a bit of, you guys remember when Oscar Piastri, someone thought that he was Oscar Pistorius, and yeah, I don't need to tell you guys the rest of that story. But anyway, George Russell was talking about the sabotage rumours with Lewis Hamilton, and actually said some interesting words, I gotta say. They can say all they want, Russell and Hamilton, and the team, it's a great internal environment. They're good friends, George and Lewis, they really get along well. I don't know if they do. We've got George saying this. I think that probably his comments that Hamilton made on the tyre temps, all this stuff, implying some degree of favouritism for Russell, comments in the heat of the moment because he knows full well that we get the same treatment. Going on to say this, Lewis is a winner, and of course these years have been frustrating for all of us, but especially for him. He's been used to winning every single season he competes in, and he hasn't won in 3 years. So he's not, wrong, is he? But it's just one of those things that it almost seems like he's throwing a bit of shade Lewis's way, is he not? Because he's like, look, he hasn't won in 3 years. I haven't won in 2 years, since obviously Brazil 2022. So as I said, it's frustrating for him, frustrating for all of us. I'm sure he didn't mean it as it came across, and saying that, yeah, he's especially frustrated more so than I, which, may well be true. And, it's interesting. I don't know. I just thought I'd mention it because I find it kind of fascinating. We've also got Mercedes, though, bringing further upgrades. They brought a new floor in Barcelona. It wasn't really new. It wasn't an upgrade. Chauvelin, I think maybe it was Chauvelin who said, yeah, the floor was the same. It was just lighter. And over time, the floors pick up damage, right? So they just, bring a new one was a good idea for them. But as Chauvelin says, they do have more packages. We have more performance to bring to the car, aerodynamic, mechanical development. Those are coming through over the next few races, but they're not telling their rivals anymore when they're going to be happening, right? So, as he says, we don't want to give our competitors an idea of when they're bringing an update, because then they will be pushing to try and bring one sooner, which is what Ferrari did. When they had this upgrade plan for Silverstone, they brought 80% of it to Barcelona because they really fast-tracked it to try and get ahead of the curve. Now, they still lost to Mercedes on both counts, but nonetheless, Mercedes are saying, look, we're not going to tell you guys anymore what we are bringing and when, because then other teams will try and, basically outdevelop us, which is understandable, but they, I guess, think they're really in a fight at the moment, which, to be fair, they most certainly are. We've got more stuff coming. We can see the gap coming down, which is true. Maybe not quite to the absolute front runners, although this is interesting for Ferrari. Giuliano De Chessa says the upgrades were evaluated at, 0.35 of a second, but they're missing about a tenth and a half in terms of optimization, right? Which is often what can happen. You bring an upgrade package, you don't necessarily get the most out of it initially. So Ferrari are saying, look, our upgrade did what we thought it would do, but they weren't necessarily quite able to maximize the potency of it quite yet. So there's potentially a bit more performance to come from the Ferrari upgrade, even from now until the next Grand Prix in Austria, where, they did win with Charles Leclerc back in 2022. Although these numbers don't paint great reading, really, for the Scuderia. This is since Imola gains compared to Red Bull, because Red Bull have obviously stalled somewhat in their development. Since Imola, Mercedes have gained half a second. McLaren have gained 0.4 of a second. Ferrari, you're talking maybe a tenth. But Ferrari are still saying up, the upgrades work as expected. There's 4 teams within 0.3 of a second. In Austria, it will presumably be very close because it's a short lap, just over a minute, shortest lap on the calendar in terms of lap time. And, we are going to see probably some small gaps between pole position if the last few races are anything to go by. And the difficulty for Red Bull and Max Verstappen is it doesn't really seem like they've got much in the works. Max actually was saying, not exactly to the team, although I imagine he was behind the scenes, but he was saying publicly to the media, look, we've got to bring some more upgrades, guys, because I'm fighting for my life out here. Like, the only real reason Max is winning these races is because he's pretty much flawless, and there have been, small mistakes, but mistakes nonetheless from Russell, Norris, etc. over the last couple of rounds. Without that, what happened in Monaco would happen, and he would, not be able to win the races as he still currently is. So Max is like, look, guys, got to bring some updates here. I don't have the fastest car right now, and that's not been, of course, the case for some time, but it feels true at the moment, certainly given that even though we expected the Red Bull to, frankly, be back to its dominant self in Spain, it wasn't really. Like, Norris probably had the faster car on the day, and as a result of that, we are seeing Sergio Perez absolutely nowhere over the last few rounds. And even Red Bull are saying, yeah, it's converging. The benefit to stable regulations, it always converges. 2026 is going to be a different story, obviously, but there is a feeling that Red Bull may have, their development has stalled to some great extent. Now, there are rumours that there are more upgrades in the works for the Red Bull that will arrive over the coming rounds, but still, there's no doubt that Max is somewhat concerned and saying to the team, hey, have we got any more things in the pipeline here, guys? Because I'm fighting for my life out here, especially because Perez is nowhere to be found in terms of backing him up. So Helmut Marko has been commenting on all of this stuff, especially this statement on the concerns around the Red Bull Ring and Spielberg in Austria that's coming up this weekend. Last year saw the resurrection of McLaren at the Red Bull Ring. That's where they brought their big upgrades, and that was their first step, really, and immediately they were faster than Mercedes, and then they went on to score serious podiums. They brought their upgrade there. From then on, they were very fast. However, Max drives practically faultlessly. Thank God Lando can't do that yet, because he remains our main rival. So we know that Marko and Red Bull rate Lando Norris very highly. They tried to sign the guy, and Lando said, no, I want to stay at McLaren. And in hindsight, that doesn't look like such a bad decision given the trajectory over the next couple of seasons. But Marko says, Lando is good, but he isn't quite as flawless as Max Verstappen is. He does make more mistakes than Max does, and that's basically the only reason why Max won that Grand Prix and Lando did not. But this I thought was a quite telling statement. I therefore hope that Mercedes will get stronger and become the second strongest force for a while, which would help us in terms of the championship, which is true. If Mercedes were to become the second strongest team, Marko quite a way back in the championship compared to McLaren, so that would help Red Bull win the Constructors' Championship. But it's nonetheless interesting that effectively Marko is hoping that his competitors, and Hamilton, Russell, Mercedes, get stronger in order to, hurt McLaren, which kind of is maybe an interesting mentality, because what you might think is that he would say, oh, we're going to get better, right? We'll bring up some upgrades, we'll make sure we've got comfortably the fastest car and then it's no problem again. But no, Marko seems to be saying, yeah, we're basically Verstappen and inshallah, right? That is basically what it is now. We're just going to hope that he wins type thing, whereas other teams are catching up, and Marko isn't saying, oh, we're going to outdevelop these other cars. He's saying, hopefully Mercedes outdevelop McLaren so Max can stay ahead as it stands. And even Marko's concerned about Spielberg. He says another challenge awaits. Max always has a chance, but we will be racing there in a sprint weekend format. So, yep, another sprint weekend. We are back in business, ladies and gentlemen. That means only one practice session. And as he says, recently we have needed all 3 practice sessions to get the car somewhat in a balanced spot. So there is concern that Red Bull may be really on the back foot this upcoming weekend. But speaking of Helmut Marko, he has been talking about Liam Lawson. Now, Liam Lawson did a great job, as everybody knows, last year in the, as it was then, the AlphaTauri towards the end of last season. Daniel Ricciardo breaks his wrist in Netherlands, of course, and then Liam Lawson subs in for the remainder of that weekend and for the upcoming weekends, does a stellar job, famously out-qualified Verstappen and Perez in Singapore that race, and, yes, he was behind Yuki Tsunoda on average pace, but arguably Lawson did a really competitive job compared to Yuki, given his performances, and I thought that Lawson's race in the Netherlands, especially last year in Zandvoort, was really competitive. He actually unlapped himself over Verstappen, kind of famously. He kept it on track. Not many others could do that. So, Lawson, to me, given his stint last year in that AlphaTauri, now RB team, definitely deserves a Formula 1 drive. I think you'd find not many people would disagree that Lawson has earned a drive in Formula 1. The problem is where. Lawson did not get the drive this year. It went to Ricciardo and Tsunoda stayed. And there were rumours that, look, if Perez underperforms, then Ricciardo or Yuki would get the promotion to Red Bull and then Lawson would step in. However, that's not the case. Perez has got his extension for reasons that are difficult to justify from my side, but from a business perspective, from a partnership perspective, from a merchandise sale perspective, then sure, I understand what Red Bull are going for. The problem is they've got 5 drivers to fit into 4 cars. It is not going to quite work. However, Marko says the shareholders have made it known that it is, as in RB, a junior team, and we have to act accordingly. So very telling statement really for Marko, basically implying we can't just be here allowing Ricciardo, a veteran, potentially past it, to just drive around in this car, because sure, he's going to bring in some nice sponsorship revenue, partners like Visa, Cash App, whatever, coming on board because of Ricciardo coming to the team. But Tsunoda is now going to be there 5 odd years, and the shareholders, Red Bull, are telling them, and who knows exactly who's giving their thoughts on this. Is it the Austrian side of the business? Is it the Thai side of the business? All that drama at Red Bull over the last few months. But Red Bull owned this team as well, and apparently the decision makers, and at least the people who own the thing, are basically saying, look, we want to use this team to actually develop younger drivers. Lawson, guys like Hadjar, other talented drivers in the Red Bull Junior programs, they seemingly don't have much future, because usually what happens is they'll go and drive Super Formula, then they'll get the seat in the sister team. But that's not happening because, Ricciardo is not hogging the seat precisely, but he's there, and Tsunoda is not getting promoted, and he's got no better options, so he's going to stay. Then Marko says the goal was that Ricciardo would be considered for Red Bull with exceptional performances. That seat now belongs to Perez, so that plan is no longer valid. So it doesn't seem like Marko is especially pleased with either driver. Of course, Marko, senior consultant effectively to Red Bull, we will have to put a young driver in there soon. That would be Liam Lawson. So he's making it abundantly abundantly clear what the current circumstance is, and of course this is the performance over the season so far, really. Ricciardo versus Tsunoda, race results, qualifying results, stuff like this. Now sure, Ricciardo had good performances in certainly Canada, right, where he stuck at P5, was incredibly impressive. Last year Mexico, of course, was also right up there, but Marko could not be much blunter that Lawson will get the drive. And also we know that if Lawson doesn't get the drive, he's free to go. That's what they told Lawson, that's what the contract says, that they apparently told Lawson, look, we're going to put Ricciardo in the team for now, but what we're trying to make happen is that Ricciardo does well, he can replace Perez, and then it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows. Ricciardo didn't really perform. The Perez replacement wasn't justifiable, although even then you might think Ricciardo could do a better job than Perez is right now. Whatever, the ship has sailed on that one, and Lawson therefore either will go to another team or he will go to RB. There are apparently other teams interested in Lawson, so even if he doesn't get Ricciardo's seat, I think that it's still very possible that he gets a drive. There's been talk about Audi. Okay, it's going to be stake, but, that team interested in Liam Lawson, which I wouldn't be surprised at all. But maybe seeing that interest elsewhere on the grid, Red Bull might have thought, you know what? Is it about time that we use the sister team for what it was intended to be used for, as actually a junior team, and bring in, basically a rookie? Sure, he had a few races, but basically a rookie onto the grid again. That would probably be my preference. Now, it's not like I want to see Ricciardo leave the sport, but, because he is an entertaining character, but just on average, he's not been good enough, right? Tsunoda's outperformed him. Spain was just bad for both drivers. I know that Tsunoda actually had some damage, I think, to his floor that they found, which is why he was just so slow during the Grand Prix. But, neither driver was impressive this weekend. The car was nowhere. And it wasn't long ago that, obviously, Jacques Villeneuve was making his very feisty statements to the media on why he feels Ricciardo is still there. So, whatever you think about Danny Rick, Marko is being pretty straight up. Ricciardo's going to go, Lawson's going to be in. When? Maybe next season, maybe in the middle of this season. Who knows what the plan is potentially going to be. But of course, my question would be, does Horner agree? Right, because after all of the power struggle, rumours and discussion over the last several months, the feeling is that, VCARB and RB and Red Bull are now more in the kind of palm, shall we say, of Mr. Christian Horner than they are in Helmut Marko's palm. So you're then wondering, what is the state of affairs here? Is Marko just saying this to rile up Horner? Because we know Horner likes Ricciardo. Horner would probably not mind the status quo. Keep Ricciardo and Tsunoda in the team, keep Verstappen Perez in the team, but if the shareholders aren't happy about it, then, well, maybe Horner will be forced to act. And this potential move is absolutely what Helmut Marko would want to do. If Marko had his way, he would have got rid of Ricciardo last season, I'm sure of it, and put Lawson in the car, and he almost certainly would have got rid of Perez as well. But no, obviously it's not working like that. They're a team, and Marko doesn't get to make all the decisions. But is he just trying to force the hand of Red Bull and Christian Horner to say, basically, look, we've made the decision, Ricciardo's going, Lawson's in, now it's your turn to actually act on the thing? And will Horner be seeing this and thinking, what does he mean? Is he leaking our plans, or is he trying to push for something to happen? Yeah, strange set of circumstances, I've got to say, and just further implies some degree of unrest at Red Bull, or at least some degree of conflict in the decision makers. And that's when, yet again, the Verstappen Mercedes thing raises up. And Toto Wolff was actually very blunt on this today. I know we always talk about it, and for a long time, I really just didn't feel like Verstappen to Mercedes was possible. Then I did. Then I thought, okay, the chances are reducing. Red Bull are a bit more stable now. Mercedes are terrible. Why would it happen? But all of a sudden, the chances of Verstappen Mercedes are raising somewhat again. And Toto Wolff actually is very blunt and says, we want to keep the decision to bring Antonelli in as long as possible because who knows what happens. So he doesn't say precisely we're waiting on Max, but he says between the lines, we're waiting on Max. Because Antonelli is going to be Hamilton's replacement. That is the plan. But, they've made their mind up on that as far as we're concerned. But Antonelli is signed to Mercedes. They don't have to worry about losing him to another team. So they can be very happy in biding their time and finding, okay, if Max does make the decision, they might even wait until the end of the season. Who knows, right? There is really no hurry to sign Antonelli. So they may wait until the very last possible day to say, okay, Kimi, you're getting the drive, don't worry about it. But also I wonder, like, if Max were to join, what that means for the longer term, right? Like, I'm sure George Russell's sitting there thinking, okay, hang on a second, they're hyping up this rookie, this junior, Antonelli. They want Max Verstappen. Like, there's only 2 seats in the team, right? So that's why Russell probably feels some degree of pressure to try and comprehensively outperform Lewis Hamilton as much as is possible. But very much into your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.